Hello and welcome to another Jay's Politics podcast, part of the Podcast 99 Internet Radio Network. You can reach us at podcast99.org or me directly at jpoliticspodcast@gmail.com or at jpolypodcast on Twitter and also at j_brown1981 on Twitter and Gab as well. Today, sorry for the delay, first and foremost. I have been trying to get this set up, but for whatever reason, my Windows is not recognizing one of the microphone inputs that I have, so I've got to try and download drivers and fix that and whatnot. But I did find a workaround, so we are using that. So today's topic is going to be one that's been covered pretty extensively by people since its publishing date of December 24th, 2018 from the New York Times. And it's the article about Patreon and how it's been reacting since all of this has been going on. Give me just a second here. I'm going to pop out my chat. Sorry, I want to keep information going here, or taking a look here. Give me just a second. And start and do live stream. There we go. Sorry. Like I said, I wanted to have this up so I can see you guys and whatnot, and back out of there. All right. So I'm doing this differently. I'm not using my OBS because I'm having a hard time also loading up an image selector to show. So I'm tweaking on that when I'm off air here. But first and foremost, what I would like to discuss is this video by Leor Lester, YouTuber Law. I'm not going to actually play it, but I'd like you to take a look at it. It's solution. I'm filing a complaint against Patreon, specifically with the FTC, against Patreon and PayPal with the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission. Now, when he's been talking about this, and when I've been talking about it, it's easy to see how this could be considered a antitrust situation between PayPal and Patreon. Wow, I can't seem to think today. That shows that they are in cahoots with each other over how to handle these things. It doesn't mean that they actually are. It presents itself as being that. So, just thought I would share that with you, that link and whatnot. But what we will actually be discussing is the actual article right here. Patreon bars anti-feminist forced racist speech inciting revolt. This article is written by Nellie Bowles. Sorry, I'm going to go with Bowles. Tim Pool over at Timcast covered this article earlier and talked about how he knows the writer. And I'm going to take him at his face value. He hasn't done anything to prove my distrust in him or anything. But he thinks, like many people, that they could have reached out to Sargon. I don't know that they did or did not. I'm going to have to take their word that there's been no reach out to Sargon about this article. However, I'm not going to do what I usually do, which is read through the whole thing because it is a rather lengthy page. But I think it's worth a read through. So Sam Harris, the polemical atheist neuroscientist known for his popular podcast Wake Up, was making tens of thousands of dollars a month from fans who donated to him through Patreon, a crowdfunding site. That stopped this month. On December 6th, Patreon kicked the anti-feminist polemic. I don't even know how to pronounce that. Polemic. I'm just going to trip over that word. Carl Benjamin, who works under the name Sargon of Akkad, off its site for use of racist language on YouTube. That same week, it removed the right-wing provocateur Milo Yiannopoulos a day after he opened his account. The moves prompted a revolt. Mr. Harris, citing worries about censorship, announced that he would leave Patreon, and he was joined in protest by about half a dozen other prominent members of the site, including conservative-leaning psychologist Jordan Peterson and libertarian podcaster Dave Rubin, who also earn money from Patreon. These recent expulsions seem more readily explained by political bias, Mr. Harris wrote to his followers. Um, the next few paragraphs are talking about how various internet platforms are trying to limit hateful speech and the backlash that it's creating, such as with Alex Jones and the hate speech violations that he met, and set off a cascade effect. And going forward, quote, "The concept of hate speech is irreducibly subjective and vague," end quote, said Nadine Strossen, author of, quote, "Hate, Why We," I don't know why I quoted it, it's the title of the book, and I know why they're doing it. Author of Hate, Why We Should Resist It with Free Speech and Not Censorship. Um, Patreon, and I think this is a fair bit of information here. Patreon was founded in 2013 by Jack Conte, a musician and disc jockey, and is valued at $450 million and employs about 170 people in the San Francisco area. Fans donate to content creators on the site whom they enjoy, and Patreon takes a 5% cut of the income. And that seems a reasonable. That seems like a reasonable amount there. However, I don't. What I think Patreon doesn't realize is what they actually are, and Patreon seems to think that they are something more than what they are, which is an intermediary between content creators like myself and the ones that actually use Patreon, specifically, between content creators and their patrons, the people who want to pay them for the work that they do. It's not to say that they don't have a right to voice their opinion, to voice the speech that they want to. The issue that I see with it, the issue that I have with it, is that they feel that they can inject their own political biases into how creators get paid. Patreon is hired by the creators to give them the money that their patrons pledge to give to them. You know, it's not anything complicated there. Um, there. Now, this is one of the things that it irritates me with the description of it. While the site is relatively small, with a little over 100,000 creators and 2 million people donating monthly to these creators, has become a, and I'm going to quote this from the article directly. It, quote, "It has become a de facto paycheck for a cohort of prominent self-styled internet philosophers who eschew or have been ousted from traditional bastions like universities or magazines." I don't, and I'm ending the quote there. I don't think that it's a de facto paycheck. It's not like Patreon pays you out of their own money. What they're doing is they're paying you out of the money they've collected on your behalf. I don't, as a content creator, if I signed up on Patreon, I don't work for Patreon. Patreon works for me. Now, it's a mutual contract, it's a mutual agreement that they will provide the services of being my intermediary so I don't have to worry about and how my patrons. That's fine. That's what I'm hiring them to do. But that doesn't mean that they are um, that they're entitled to press upon me their values if that's not what I'm about, you know? That's just one of those things. Sorry about the hard mute there. Taking a drink of water. All right. Uh, Among Patreon's hodgepodge of creators is the left-leaning podcast group Chapo Trap House, which makes over 110,000 a month from the site, according to Graphtreon, which tracks Patreon activities. They go over the various different groups here, but I do want to pull up one other thing. And I'm going to go back to share my screen here. Give me just a second. And this is Sargon's. This is as of today. I went onto Graphtreon, pulled this up. Oh, zoomed out. His hard end, he was 4 years as a Patreon creator. He was originally ranked, according to this at the time, 117th. That he was making almost $12,000 a month from Patreon with an average earning or an average donation of $3.67. That is crazy. That is just crazy. So, oh, I see that I got a notification that Lords of the Night is on. But you can see that he had pretty steady growth, and then all of a sudden, December 6th, bam. He has this huge drop because of not anything he did, but because of what Patreon was doing and what people were saying to him. So that is quite interesting. That is quite telling that they would do that. So let me get back over there to this. Share screen. Stop. All right. So Patreon takes a highly personal approach to policing speech. While Google and Facebook use algorithms as a first line of defense for questionable content, Patreon has human moderators. They give out warnings and reach out to talk to offenders, presenting options for education and reform. Quote, education and quote, reform. Unquote. Some activists hope this will become a model for a better and kinder internet. This line right here is utter bull. Utter bull. Because of the simple fact that if they gave out warnings, Sargon would have known this was coming. If they gave out the option to reform and educate him, they wouldn't have just pulled him from their platform. They would not have just booted him off of his platform with them or off of their platform for this. They don't even follow their community guidelines, which I happen to have a cache internet browser of their terms of service before this whole thing started. Excuse me. You can see here, there's no room on Patreon for hate speech. So let's go down here. How their guidelines are enforced. Be respectful. You know, authenticity, copyright infringement. That's understand bullying and harassment and threats. Hate speech. Patreon connects creators with their patrons all over the world. We are a global platform promoting creativity, which makes this a very inclusive group. Therefore, there is no room on Patreon. Again, no room on Patreon for hate speech, such as calling for violence, exclusions, and segregation. I hate to tell you this, society segregates itself. We have things like Chinatowns in cities, like San Francisco has one of the largest Chinatowns. Hate speech includes serious attacks or even negative generalizations based on people's race, ethnicity, national origin, religion, sex, gender, sexual orientation, age, disability, or serious medical conditions. When viewing, we consider some of the following. This is not all inclusive, yada. If you come across what you believe to be hate speech on Patreon, please take time to report it. Now, this was before they refreshed and updated it. The current update is as of December 12th, I think is what it was, when everybody started calling out this BS. But anyways, back to what we're talking about. There are no automatic takedowns, BS. As a creator myself, dealing with these big tech platforms and getting automatically taken down, there's no appeals process. You can't talk to a human. I've never wanted to do that. Well, Mr. Conte, what happened to Sargon? When was he warned? When was he told you need to change what you're doing? He wasn't. There's a reason why I have not myself joined Patreon. One, I've been unsure about the legality of it here in my state, how I would be taxed if at all um, through my state running it as a business, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. However, that's that's what's predominantly stopped me. But now this is making me uneasy to join Patreon as a creator. I have a page to donate if I choose to, but I haven't yet activated a creator account. Jacqueline Hart, Patreon's head of trust and safety, says their team watches for and will investigate complaints about any content posted on Patreon and other sites like YouTube, Facebook that violate it, what it defines as hate speech. And let's take a look if this is the new community guidelines. Oh, nope, it's a link to her article. Alrighty, so closing that down. Yep, Discord popped in with a notification. Um, it's a link to her actual medium.com page. So, if someone breaches policy, the company contacts the offender with a specific plan, which usually involves asking for content to be removed and for a public apology. Really, still haven't seen that. Still haven't seen that contact as a to Sargon specifically. The conversations with creators can quickly become complicated, nuanced, and well human, she said. Among other challenges, Patreon has to decide what qualifies as a sincere and thorough apology. Okay, how do you know what is or is not sincere? Oh, that's right, it's subjective. It is literally a subjective point to the person receiving it. It's not a point that can be quantifiable. I mean, I could sit here and lie through my teeth and give an apology that sounds sincere to most people, but it wouldn't be sincere from my point of view, but it might be from yours. It might be from Miss Hart's. And I have to say that this V said it correctly. If you get a chance, and I'll try to update my links below, but V covered this earlier this morning or late yesterday. I don't know what time it was. He was in Romania. This wall here looks very foreboding. She's sitting there with the posture to me that I lord over these people. These people have to answer to me as what is good and what is bad. Very 1984-esque, if you ask me. Um, but it's just, of course, I'm sitting here talking about it, and it's not. I'm not sharing my screen because I'm an idiot like that. Let me go back to this. Here we go. All right. So as you can see, the bare wall V was talking about, and her posture just, I'm sure it was staged, but at the same time, it just feels like she's trying to say, I'm the boss of everything. When you get your money, things like that, because you may violate what I perceive to be hate speech, and therefore you have to convince me of a sincere and thorough apology. We handhold creators and we work with them one on one, and nearly every creator reforms. And that is such a damning and telling word to use here. Reform. Why should I reform to you, to your standards, to get the money that people want to give me anyways? I wouldn't I don't have to. I don't have to go through a Patreon. I could use PayPal. I could use Streamlabs. I could use hell if I had enough views and enough subscribers. I could go via super chats and all that. Just premiere every video, sit there and do super chats, things like that. But that's not the point. The point and issue of this is why should we reform to Patreon standard? The work takes up a large amount of resources. Ms. Hart says around 10% of the Patreon employees are dedicated to her team. 10% of 170, 17 people. That does seem like a lot for a business. But at the same time, it's if they're not policing it, they should be doing something like what Google and Facebook do. But I know Jack Conte doesn't want to do that. This month, the site's moderators received a complaint about Mr. Benjamin, who rise to fame railing against diversity and feminism during the Gamergate movement of 2014. Mr. Benjamin's use of the N-word and anti-gay language during an interview posted to YouTube on February 7th, Patreon found. Okay. Patreon didn't find this. I am highly certain that they did not go scouring through every single stream that he had been on. I think somebody happened to be a fan of the person hosting the stream, commented on it, sent it to, or linked it, took a timestamp of when it began, and then sent it to Patreon. I've watched that stream. Patreon takes Sargon, Carl Benjamin, out of context. They just play for you, or they just show you the excerpts in that informational link up here, right here. Only what he says, not what's being talked to him, not what's being said to him, or anything like that. No, just his words. How can you derive context from just one person's words in a live stream conversation where they're interacting with the chat? I mean, it would be like me talking to my chat, having some troll in there, and me calling them a troll and telling them that they're evil and hateful and blah, 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 and then getting dinged on Facebook or YouTube or whatever. I mean, come on now. On December 6th, the company told Benjamin that it would freeze his account and that he could appeal. Wrong. It was closed. Not frozen. Closed. Mr. Benjamin objected and said that the video in question should not fall under Patreon's rules because it was on YouTube. For Mr. Benjamin, the timing was surprising. My brand has been politically incorrect for years, he said in a video he later posted to his YouTube channel called The Patreon Witch Trials. Mr. Benjamin, who did not respond to requests for comment, again, I have no proof that you did not reach out to him, and I have no proof that you did. I have to take your word, and I have to take other people's words. So for right now, I'm assuming that it's somewhere in the middle. Maybe you did, and he never got the request, or if he did and chose to ignore it, that's on him. Or maybe you didn't send it and you just wrote it in here to make it seem like you did. I don't know. I'm going to try and give you the benefit of the doubt here, Nelly. So, but anyways, Mr. Benjamin has 870,000 subscribers on YouTube, more than 3,000 subscribers on Patreon, from which he had been making around $12,000 a month. Many of his videos show a static cartoon or a series of images with his voice speaking against the movements for gender equality. That is a lot of his older stuff. Now he's getting more into actual presenting of his face. It's fine. More recently, Mr. Benjamin has moved from the fringe towards the heart of the new right. No. If anything, the way that you word this, Nelly, is that he's not moving from the fringe towards the new right. He was already being called alt-right. Now you're telling us that he's just, a right-winger. There's a big difference between alt-right and right-winger. But in October, he posted an hour-long interview with Steve Bannon, President Trump's former chief strategist. Benjamin did not respond to attempts to engage him in the reform process, Ms. Hart said. Bull, he has videos. As a matter of fact, I might even go dig those up and throw them in the link in the description down below as well. His response to us when we told him about the reform process was to nitpick and say, quote, "I was being anti-Nazi," end quote. Miss Hart said, "You cannot say those words on our platform." Again, here she goes. You cannot say those words on our platform. YouTube is not Patreon's platform. Not at all. And if you go and look on Patreon, oh, actually, you know what? Here, I'm going to open up a patreon.com. Let's take a look at this. Search the word. This is all posts, all creators, everything. Where I have the word. Oh, look at that. 9 pages, 13 pages. Now, granted, some of them I could probably go and do my search a little neater. Let's go back and do that search one more time. Let's do specifically that word. Let's see how many pages you actually give me. All right, we're up to 13, 17. Now, granted, some of these are actually coming in with Nigeria and things like that. That's fine. Probably some historical context. But the point of the matter is, you don't police this from your platform. You don't remove it. It is allowed. So why is it allowed? And from Mr. Peterson, I think the most likely outcome if this continues is that all contentious speech or behavior will be will put the speaker or actor at risk of serious financial and social sanctions, stripping them of all defense, Dr. Peterson wrote in an email. Mr. Rubin, the libertarian podcaster, tweeted, "The platform war has begun." Mr. Rubin and it should be Dr. Peterson, by the way. Dr. Peterson has said they started planning their own version of Patreon, which will be less censorious. Mr. Peterson and his Patreon subscriptions have dropped to around 7,500 from about 10,000 over the summer, according to Graphtron. And that's pretty much all that I wanted to cover. Is that on this particular part of it, is that when it comes to censorious behaviors by these platforms, I understand you want to create a welcoming environment, and that trolls will be trolls. They will antagonize people. However, you cannot justifiably tell me that by censoring people, you're going to get rid of the problem. You cannot justifiably tell me that by censoring what you believe to be quote unquote hate speech is going to solve the problem. I was sitting in my car on my way home today testing out the way my car is charging my GoPro, which sucks, by the way. And I was talking, and one of the ideas that was in my head, and this is something I don't know that Jack Conte will actually want to listen to at all. But how about instead of relying on the public to come to you for your trust and safety team to work with to get violators of your so-called rules or terms of service, how about you get bots or AI that go out and search for these terms? And rather than flagging the the offender in question and stopping the flow of money, you actually flag and it comes into your trust and safety team. The trust and safety team is then required to watch the segment or the entire video for full context. In all honesty, Sargon should not have been banned for what he said. Poor choice of words, albeit, and I don't agree with him using them. But he should not have been banned for the simple fact of who he was talking to and how they were talking to him directly. If you cannot understand that, then there is no hope for you understanding what you're doing is censorship and that you're doing it based on an ideological principle. Might be political, but it's still ideological. And this whole far left progressive mentality is becoming basically a religion in and of itself. Many of those people who are on that side are atheistic or agnostic at best. And yet you are working inside of, for lack of a better term, a church. You are working within this mold that if you don't believe what I believe, if you don't do as I say, then I'm gonna excommunicate you from from the far left, the progressive ideology. You know, and yet many of you don't see it that way. Many of you act as if you have the sole whole truth of the universe in your hands, in your minds, and it's not. I am quite liberal on many things. I'm quite liberal in the fact that want free market. I want people to be able to own their weapons. You know, I want them to have their Second Amendment rights. I want them to have their liberties to speak freely. I can also be quite conservative in other fashions as well. This is why whenever I take these political stream test streams, it is because it ends up with me being left of center and in a more libertarian style on the quadrant scale here. However, to most people that are in the progressive area, I'm considered a right winger at best or alt right at worst. And representationally speaking, I'm not. You know, I don't I don't know how many I don't know how to really word this to many people, but if I can't trust the company the company I hire to do business with to provide me the funds that my consumers, my patrons want to pay me for doing my work on YouTube, on stream.me, on Twitch, on wherever I'm streaming to, wherever I upload my videos at, etc. You know, what am I to do? What are we to do? Now, I'm looking forward to seeing what Dr. Peterson and Mr. Rubin come up with. I am still I haven't had a chance to contact my state's Department of Revenue um, to discuss this matter because I actually want to talk to a person. Um, Jack Conte, I implore you, use bots to start the initial search. After that, once your trust and safety team has reviewed the for full context, then if a strike is warranted, contact that member, that creator. Tell them, hey, our bots found this. This is why it violates our terms of service, even though it's on another platform. And I don't even have a problem with Patreon policing other platforms. You know, content creators, you know, create all over the internet. And that is perfectly fine for them to say, "Hey, on your YouTube channel, you use this, and it was a video that, you know, uses our logo. It's a video that you promoted us as a way for you to get money. We don't want to be associated with people using that word. We're asking you to pull that video down, either add a before or after to the end, saying, "Hey, this is this is why I pulled all my Patreon information from here. And anytime that I'm going to be discussing a topic like this, I will not include Patreon, especially if it may cause me to spout out these phrases." which Patreon does not approve of. And then go from there. Second time, freeze the money for a month. You know, be like, I goofed again, and Patreon's withholding the funds this month. You know, and you know, maybe at that point the content creator, pulls all the Patreon stuff from their live streams, from all the videos they do, and they have another source, such as Streamlabs, such as PayPal Direct, things like that. And then on the third time it happens, you're done. 3 strikes, you're out. And now the one caveat to all of this is, did it happen on my Patreon? Did I promote this site with the creator of it? So, like, say for example, I'm hosting Sargon. I'm and he's back on Patreon or whatever, like hypothetical here. And I have, alt-right people harassing him, you know, and he comes out and calls them something else that's not the N word. Patreon boots him off of there for that. They shouldn't boot him off of there, especially if it's on my channel, first of all. Second of all, if I'm not promoting Patreon on it and he's not, and I don't post his Patreon anywhere in my links, it doesn't matter. It doesn't it may violate your rules, but we weren't promoting your platform. There you go. Ergo, you don't have a say in what we're doing. And as far as PayPal is concerned, again, going back to YouTuber Law, Leah Lester's video, the fact that Miss Hart here, is that her name? Sorry, I forgot. Give me just a second here. Yeah, Miss Jacqueline Hart here. She's worked for Patreon, or not Patreon. She worked for PayPal for a while. There is definitely a conflict of interest there if PayPal is causing issues for other, for lack of a better phrase, startup competitors to Patreon, and Stripe following suit. She may know these people quite well, and they may feel bad for her because, as a public relations student, I'm going to school for public relations. This, to me, is a giant PR nightmare. Now, should they have capitulated and apologized to everyone? No. I I don't agree with how they did things. I don't agree with what they're doing. But at the same time, I don't think they should be doubling down on it like they have been. That's the problem I'm having with this, is that they're doubling down constantly. Um, it drives me absolutely nuts. Um, I really, really hope that Patreon understands the difference between what they're doing and what they're not doing. And just to show you the difference of their hate speech section, well, if you go to their guidelines, um, and because I did this under guidelines hashtag hate speech, it pulled up the cached file. But if I were to just do guidelines, I'm sure if I just did guidelines, let's see. Actually, just refresh this. All right, so back to where I was on the page. Community guidelines. All right, and we will present to everybody. Hide, and I'm going to delete hashtag hate speech. We'll go to guidelines. Looks like they might have actually just reset it after they got caught changing it. All right, so let's just go to patreon.com. All right. And community guidelines. I must have a cached version. All right. let's go back to stop sharing. Minimize you for a second. Open up this. Patreon.com on Google. Let's go all the way down. Oh, no, they actually reversed it. Here's my proof because I have never looked up Patreon's. Um, I've never actually looked up Patreon's guidelines on my Chrome browser. And present to everybody. Here you go. So they've obviously changed it. You can go back to my stream where I actually went over this. I'll have to find it and link that into the bottom too now. They did change their terms of service and now they've stopped. So quite interesting to see how this is all working out for them. Again, I want to support Patreon. I want to be able to support companies like Patreon. I want to know that they're going to support me as a creator. I want to know what it is that we as content creators can be assured of. I should definitely have the right to speak my mind, to say my piece, have my ideas challenged by people. Please come into my comment sections, challenge me on what I'm saying. I have no problem with that. But at the same time, prepare to have your ideas challenged. At the same time, prepare to have your ideas met with resistance, especially if you're trying to troll me into saying something. It's fine. I don't care if you try to troll a troll. It's not a big deal. I will figure out a way to either get you to listen to what I'm saying or I just ignore you. It's one of the two options. I don't even have banned people on my channel. Matter of fact, let me see if I do or not. Do I have anybody on my YouTube banned? Sorry. Board. And we'll go to Creator Studio. And if you think I'm going to share my Creator Studio so you can get my stream keys, screw off. Community. By the way, thanks for the 28 subscribers. Community settings. Okay, so all right, trying to get this into the trying to get this lined up into this frame here. I'm actually just rambling on now and it's kind of funny. All right, so as you can see, hidden users. It is literally no one. I have no blocked words. I have no blocked links. However, if I find something that I find offensive or whatnot, I won't. But I'm not going to actually show you who my moderators are. I don't even think most of them know they're moderators on my channel. So for maybe one, but it's all right. Anyways, I'm going to end this here. I'm done rambling here. I'm gone far longer than I wanted to. But again, Patreon, for the love of all that is good in the world, stop trying to tell people what they can say. Clarify things in your terms of service. I understand that terms of service have to be vague to protect a company. I get that. I'm not an idiot. I may not be a lawyer, but I am not an idiot. But I at least make it so your users, the people you contract with to be the intermediary between creator and patron. Understand what it is you're about. Hate speech is such a nebulous term that you can't define it. It's not quantifiable. Offending somebody is not even quantifiable because what one person finds offensive, another person may find hilarious, may find loving, may find caring. You know, white supremacists being anti-Semitic, they'll for all the people that are white supremacists, they'll find comfort in that. But anybody who's Jewish or allied with Jewish people, etc., would find it offensive. And then there are people in between who are just like, meh. I mean, there's no hard lines on what's good and what's bad. You know, I mean, I don't know anymore. I just don't know how else to word this to people. Hopefully, this will be the last Patreon video I make, other than whether I'm going to join Patreon in the new year or if I'm going to join another type of payment services. Again, I have to figure out what it is that I'm allowed to do and what I'm not allowed to do in regards to my state. Even though I don't have a quote unquote state income tax as a person, many businesses do have to pay business taxes, such as sales tax, which is what I'm reading. And, I might actually put a link down to it in below with the link to my state's Department of Revenue. Alrighty, this has been another Jay's Politics podcast, and it's been a Thoughts by Jay kind of segment with the talking of Patreon. I want to thank you guys for listening. I want to thank you guys for being there for me and having fun. Um, if you're watching this later, please leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you have to say. And I understand that freedom of speech is against the First Amendment is against governments. That's fine. But and where does government end and private company begin when it comes to public places, public forums? That's kind of one of the questions we have to ask. Have a great week. I hope you enjoyed your Christmas, whatever holidays you celebrate, Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, and hope you enjoyed the new year. Look forward to seeing you. And check us out at AT2 Productions this Friday for Veterans Talk Weekly. Have a great one.